is the time. We'll talk more about vaccine passports in a moment, but let's pick up a story you've heard on the news headlines. This claim by the Taliban they're in complete control of the Afghan province of Panjshir, if I'm saying it correctly. That's deemed to be the final, really, part of the country which has remained outside their rule to date. The accuracy of that, obviously these are very fluid times, but let's put that question to Conservative MP and Armed Forces Minister James Heappey. What is your, and I appreciate again it's a fluid situation, what do you understand to be the current story over there? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. So we are only able to base our understanding on what we're also hearing reported through the Taliban overnight. But I think it's important to say that it doesn't change the calculus in the slightest. From the moment that Kabul fell, we regarded the Taliban as the government of Afghanistan, whether we liked it or not, and we needed to work with them in that immediate aftermath in order to facilitate the evacuation of people, as we discussed on a number of occasions over the last couple of weeks. So when we reach the point of recognising the Taliban, if we reach the point of recognising the Taliban, it won't be a consequence of their military prowess and the completeness of their military victory. It'll be a consequence of the way that they act in government and whether or not the international community chooses to recognise them as a consequence.
Now, we're going to hear part of that addressed by the Prime Minister later today, without, of course, asking you to steal his thunder. Can you give us some broad brushstrokes of what we'll hear from Mr Johnson?
No, because I haven't seen his speech myself, to be honest with you.
I understand he'll talk about using every economic, political and diplomatic lever to protect our country from harm and help the Afghan people. We've sort of been in retreat. It seems a rather strange stance to take now, Minister.
No, I think that that's the kind of necessary reality of where we are. I mean, we can have a debate, as we've touched on in a number of our conversations previously, about whether we should be in this situation at all. And I do think that one of the things that is missing from that debate is recognition that because of that Doha deal, on May the 1st, we were committed by the Americans to the Taliban to leave. We could have stayed, of course we could. The international community had the military might to do so, but we wouldn't have been able to stay with the few thousand troops that were in Afghanistan at the time and had been in Afghanistan over the last couple of years. We would have had to be sending troops in their thousands back to Afghanistan, ready to fight again against the Taliban this fighting season. And I think it feels odd to me that people sort of they seem to think the choice was between the status quo that we had found militarily in Afghanistan and leaving. The choice was not that status quo. That was a consequence of a deal. The choice was to fight again with all of the troops that requires, or to leave. Now, we can have a discussion about whether it was the right choice to leave, but the reality is that now we have left. The levers that are available are political, diplomatic and economic. I think that matters to the Taliban. They want to be the government of Afghanistan. They want recognition from the international community. They want economic support from the international community. And so those levers are not without consequence. But equally, to sort of say that we should never be in this place at all is to sort of ignore that the choice was between fighting or leaving.
The men and women who were brave enough to take part in Operation Pitting, at the moment I understand there will not be a separate campaign medal because you'll know better than I, but a military decree or rule is it cannot be fewer than 30 days deployment. Shouldn't there be some recognition of this? Could there not be a bar to the existing medal, Minister?
So there is a discussion of that going on right now.
And where are you on that, Minister?
Well, look, I mean, there is a thing within troops that are held at very high readiness in the sort of global response force that is 16 Air Assault Brigade and other units, where they take a sort of pride in the fact that they are at immediate notice to move, to go to places for very short periods of time, to make an intervention, and that very often the length of that intervention won't be medal winning. Now, the very extreme circumstances that we've seen of the last few days, where the last time I spoke to you, I was warning as hard as I could about the imminence of a suicide bombing. They have seen scenes of enormous humanitarian desperation that led to lives being lost in a crush. There's every argument that says that some sort of medallic recognition is necessary, but at the same time, they went for a short period of time, and it is important that medals have real rigour in the way that they're awarded. If I may, Nick, the people that have qualified for medals are the 4 Ministry of Defence civil servants who were there for a number of months beforehand, processing interpreters, and who chose to stay when Kabul fell. And I can't tell you how much we're looking forward to pinning a medal on their chests And of course, we're having the wider discussion about how we might recognise those who served for those 2 weeks during op pitting.
Would you support it, though, op pitting, lastly, on this?
What would I support medallic recognition?
A separate bar or separate recognition, noting that you are a military bloke yourself. Would you support it?
You know,
Come on, it's a yes or no, Minister, respectfully.
Nick, so don't do that, because I've answered your questions as honestly and as succinctly as I can, but I'm now conflicted, because as a military man, I loved winning medals. I wear my medals with enormous pride every time. Of course, I would understand how those soldiers would love to have something to wear to show what they did. As a minister in the MOD, I have to be really clear that medals bring with them need criteria, and that the medals that we award in the United Kingdom have real rigour behind them. The conversation's ongoing, and I'm conflicted.
Okay. You're a military man, so rebellion does not come easily to you. Moving us to other matters, there are front pages, many of them today. Prime Minister faces mutiny over plan to raise taxes for social care. Minister, are you potentially part of that mutinous bunch?
Well, so, I mean, the odd thing is mutiny over speculation. I mean, I'm ready for Rishi Sunak to tell us his plan before I march myself to the top of the hill or not. That sort of feels like the right way of doing this. I've seen all of the debate rage in the newspapers over the weekend. There's no right or wrong answer to this, Nick. There's nothing that Rishi can say that every single politician, every single journalist, every single charity and interest group will say that's the answer. But as an MP that comes from a part of the world, Somerset, where the social care challenge is particularly acute, I can tell you that the current system is not working, and just pumping more money into it will not be the answer. We have got to find a way of sorting out the social contract. Too many governments have ducked this for too many decades.
You're absolutely right, but many would say suggesting young workers should pay for elderly people to keep their properties, same young workers who might never get on the property ladder, that doesn't seem like a particularly adroit solution either, Minister.
But do you not think that is, there'll be lots of your listeners right now who are retired who will be incensed at the characterisation of the elderly as sitting on a massive house that's bought and paid for with huge savings and with shareholdings and everything else. That's not the reality for many of the retired people that I represent from the Wales constituency. And I just think that pitting this as a sort of an intergenerational unfairness doesn't recognise that there are elderly people that struggle and need support just as much as there are young people that struggle and need support. What we need to find, and this is going to be hard, there will be no consensus, but we have to try, because if you can't do it with a majority of 80, when can you? We need to try and find a route forward on this and not make this some sort of intergenerational battle. That's the wrong way of characterising this. The social contract in the UK is broken. It needs to be transformed. We need to get on with doing it.
Always grateful for your time. Thank you very much indeed. Armed Forces Minister James Heappey appearing here on LBC, where the time is 8 o'clock. News is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom.